Okay, it's about 7:01. My name is Stephen Waller, and I am a senior planner in the Fairfax County Department of Planning and Development's Planning Division, and I would like to welcome everyone attending tonight's community screening meeting. I'm sorry. Hopefully the sound is better now. Can you? Just want to make sure everyone can hear me, and I'll try it again. Okay. Good evening. I'm Stephen Waller, with a senior planner in the Fairfax County Department of Planning and Development's Planning Division, and I would like to welcome everyone to for attending who's attending tonight's community screening meeting to review and discuss 2025 nominations for site-specific plan amendments in the Merrifield Suburban Center. Tonight's meeting is being recorded, so we kindly request for everyone to remain muted until called upon to speak. And please use the raise hand button at the bottom of your screen to let our meeting co-host know that you wish to speak. Some versions of Zoom may have a reactions button that will need to be clicked before you see a raise hand option. And if you do not wish to provide feedback verbally, please place it in the chat box, and our co-host from the staff team will be happy to answer them. So we'll begin with a look at tonight's agenda. First, I will be providing a brief overview of the comprehensive plan, which provides guidance for how Fairfax County manages future growth and development. And then I'll go on to explain the where the SSPA process fits in with the ways that we can respond to changes that impact land use and development in the county. From there, we'll spend most of our time together focusing on the four Providence District SSPA nominations that were submitted for sites in the Merrifield Suburban Center in the order that's listed here. And before we get started, I'd also like to introduce some of our staff team who are here with us today from the Department of Planning and Development. Again, I'm Stephen Waller, or Steve, and we also have Katrina Knutson with us, who's another senior planner in the planning division. And we have Graham Owen, who is my branch chief in the planning division. And we also have Mo Ali, who is another colleague of ours in the planning division. Also attending, we have some staff members from the Fairfax County Department of Transportation. And we also have I think Supervisor Palchik, or at least some representatives from her office are watching and taking notes as well with us tonight. First, a little bit about the site-specific plan amendment process. The countywide SSPA process provides an opportunity for property owners and other members of the public to propose land use changes as nominations to amend the comprehensive plan for a single site or a collection of parcels. The goal of SSPA is to provide the community with an active role in shaping the long-term vision of Fairfax County. Prior to SSPA, many of you may be familiar with the Area Plans Review process, or APR, which was a similar type of community-initiated review of the comprehensive plan. The purpose of tonight's meeting is to provide the community with information about the site-specific plan amendment process and to invite public comments on SSPA nominations that were submitted in the Providence Supervisor District. So it is very important to note that no decisions will be made for any of the projects that are being discussed tonight. Before we dive into the site-specific plan amendment process, we just like to be sure that everyone is familiar with the comprehensive plan and has an understanding of the ways that it is structured to focus on long-range land use planning while also respecting the legacy of existing conditions within the built and natural environment of Fairfax County. The comprehensive plan, or the plan for short, is the primary document used to guide Fairfax County's decision-making processes related to land development and resource protection over the long term. It is important to note that the plan is not law like the zoning ordinance, but instead it provides land use recommendations and serves as a living document that should be evaluated and reevaluated from time to time to ensure that the county's land use policies continue to reflect community values, visions, and goals as significant changes may occur. The SSPA process is just one of the ways that these changes can be initiated and possibly lead to a process for amending the comprehensive plan. In Fairfax County, the comprehensive plan is divided into three basic parts. The first part is the policy plan volume, which provides countywide policies and objectives on 11 elements, including land use, transportation, the environment, public facilities, housing, economic development, along with other topics. The second part is the area plan volume, which geographically divides the county into 4 planning areas, each with its own specialized guidance for implementing goals of the policy plan. Each of the area plans is separated into smaller planning districts containing community planning sectors and special planning areas, such as the Merrifield Suburban Center, Vienna Transit Station areas, and the Tyson's Urban Center, for example. And each of these special areas often have their own area-specific and site-specific land use recommendations. The last part of the plan is made up of a series of maps, such as the comprehensive plan land use map, the transportation plan map, and the trails and bicycle network maps. The concept for future development provides a high level and aspirational vision for development that conforms with guidance of the comprehensive plans, area plans. The concept is presented both in map form and in the body of the area plan text to set forth a vision for ways that development should be established within specific areas of the county. Looking at the concept map here will generally allows us to see where future population growth and development in Fairfax County are primarily planned to be concentrated within mixed use centers that are color coded and outlined here in the legend. Areas outside of the mixed use centers, such as the yellow suburban neighborhood classification, are planned for little to no changes. The Merrifield Suburban Center is also circled on the map here because the concept for future development recommendations are referenced in the review of all 4 of the SSPA nominations that will be discussed tonight. The comprehensive plan introduces a variety of land use terms, and two of the most common ways that we refer to the quantity of development are density and intensity. And these are terms that will be used later in our discussion of the SSPA nominations. Here in the aerial image of Merrifield, we can see that higher intensity uses have been established through redevelopment at taller building heights in areas approaching the Dunloring Station, the Dunloring Merrifield Metro Station to the north, and in the Mosaic District Town Center to the south. And in the center, the red circle is identifying some of the existing areas that are still developed with lower intensity industrial and flex uses. Residential density is most often measured in dwelling units per acre, or DU/AC, DU per AC. And this slide shows typical building forms and housing types established at various densities throughout Fairfax County. Fewer dwelling units per acre is a less dense development. For example, low density development is often represented by single family detached dwellings located in areas recommended for 1 to 2 or 3 to 4 dwelling units per acre. Townhomes and split level townhomes normally range between 8 to 12 and 12 to 16 dwelling units per acre, and multifamily apartments of all types and forms and along with condominiums are often found at the higher end of the density spectrum with more than 16 dwelling units per acre. Floor area ratio is the term that is most used to describe the intensity of non-residential and mixed-use development, which can often combine both residential uses and non-residential uses like offices, retail, and service uses. To calculate FAR, we divide the floor area of building space by the land area within a development site. In the example shown here, we can see three different design scenarios that would all yield an intensity of 1.0 FAR on a 100,000 square foot parcel, starting with a 4-story building with 25,000 square feet on each floor, covering 1/4 of the site. Next, we see a 2-story building with 50,000 square feet on each floor. And last, there is a 1-story building that covers the entire 100,000 square foot site area. Again, all three of these are examples of a site that could be built out at 1.0 FAR, but these different building forms help us to compare the amount of ground space that is taken up by each form of development in contrast to how much open space would be remaining. So tonight's meeting is all about gathering community feedback on each of the 4 SSPA nominations in Merrifield. SSPA community screening meetings provide members of the community like you with an opportunity to learn about and discuss these nominations. The information that we learn from you tonight will also be provided for consideration by the Planning Commission and Board of Supervisors when determining which of these nominations should be authorized for placement on the 2025 Plan Amendment Work Program for further study and in-depth analysis as comprehensive plan amendments. In some cases, SSPA proposals that are authorized for study as plan amendments could also be accompanied by a more detailed application for approval to rezone the property, which would then be followed by the submission of a site plan, all of which would be further stages in the land use planning review and development process that community members can continue to monitor for a proposal that goes all the way through to construction. However, it is again important to remember that no decisions are being made on the final fate for any of these projects tonight. Here's our anticipated timeline for the SSPA program phase, for the SSPA program, sorry. The nomination phase acceptance periods was open for 1 month between January 13th and February 13th of this year. And nominators were able to submit these nominations online using the county's Excel Plus system. After that, the Board of Supervisors voted to accept 43 nominations for screening as an action item on the March 4th meeting agenda. This week marks the first of 4 weeks when community screening meetings will be held from now through mid-April. In early June, the Planning Commission will hold 3 screening workshops that will be open to the public. And at those workshops, they will be able to evaluate each nomination and develop recommendations that will be forwarded to the Board of Supervisors to help decide which nominations should be added to the Comprehensive Plan Work Program. And then that board meeting will take place at some point in either late May or early June. If a nomination passes through screening and the board adds it to the work program, the board will prioritize the review and public engagement additional public engagement along with all other plan amendments. In short, some nominations may be ready for immediate review, while others could require additional thought and efforts by the nominators before staff is directed to allocate any additional time to the review. If a nomination does not pass screening, it is not added to the plan amendment work program, and it will be removed from further consideration in this SSPA cycle. Properties that were subject to an unsuccessful nomination could still have the potential to be redeveloped under current recommendations of the adopted comprehensive plan and prior zoning approvals. Nominations could also be submitted during a future SSPA cycle on the same property with demonstration that changes have been made to the proposal or other land use related circumstances have changed. Before we get into Merrifield, I thought it would be helpful to take a look at the countywide numbers first. This map provides the geographic distribution of 53 SSPA nominations that were submitted across all planning districts in the 2025 countywide cycle. The nomination phase officially concluded on March 24th. On March 4th, when the Board of Supervisors voted to accept 43 out of those 53 nominations to move forward into this screening phase. So next is when we'll start taking a look at the Merrifield SSPA nominations. For the Providence District as a whole, 11 sites have been nominated, and they're mostly concentrated in the eastern side of the district between Route 29 and Dulles Toll Road. And we have 3 nominations in Tysons, 4 in Merrifield, and 2 that are in suburban neighborhoods that are outside of special planning areas. The land use concept for Merrifield Suburban Center provides goals for centering the highest intensities of development within 2 mixed-use core areas. The southern core area is focused on creating a town center at the Mosaic District, and the northern core is focused on the Dunloring Merrifield Metro Station. Each core area is envisioned to develop with a pedestrian-oriented mix of uses that is relatively urban in character. To achieve this, the comprehensive plan sets several priorities for revitalization within Merrifield that can achieve a wide range of goals for improved quality in life. And this includes greater access to affordable housing and ample amounts of publicly accessible parks and open space. The northeast half of the subject site, I'm sorry, the color coding here again corresponds to the way that the core areas and adjacent core areas and non-core areas are planned, along with edges that are adjacent to the surrounding suburban neighborhoods. For each of these SSPA nominations, I will begin by providing a brief overview of the existing site conditions and then go to the currently adopted plan recommendations and planning considerations that should be prioritized if the Board of Supervisors determines that any of these proposals will warrant further study at the completion of screening. As we go through each of the nominations, it will be important to remember that the Merrifield Suburban Center sets these goals again for centering the highest intensities of a development within those 2 mixed-use core areas of the town center and the transit station area. Now, the first of the nominations that we have lettered as A is CPN 2025, Roman numeral 1, PR for Providence District dash 030 or 030. And that site is located at 2719 through 2737 Dorr Avenue. Next, we have PR 39, which is we're identifying as Halstead Road and Merrifield Avenue. And that's because the southern border of the site is on Merrifield Avenue. And then to the north, it is the site would be perpendicular with Halstead Square Road. Next is PR 035, which is situated at 2800 through 2804 Dorr Avenue. And then lastly, we have PR 36, which we're calling Dorr Avenue South because it contains one of the sites that has been nominated is contains properties that are located at the southernmost portion of Dorr Avenue. So we'll begin with the initial analysis for SSPA nomination CPN 2025, Roman numeral 1, PR 030, or just PR 030. And this nomination is for an approximately 3.52 acre site in subunit C4 of the Merrifield Suburban Center. The two low-rise buildings that are developed on the site serve various light warehousing and wholesale uses, including country floors, tile store, marble systems tile store, and Cheer Extreme Fairfax. The adopted plan for subunit C4 recommends the site to develop with mixed uses, including residential, retail, industrial, and warehouse uses at the current intensities for the baseline. And then 2 plan options for redevelopment in conformance with the area-wide vision for Merrifield are also provided. Option 1 calls for redevelopment to office use with support retail and service uses up to 0.85 FAR. And option 2 calls for redevelopment as mixed use or residential use up to 1.35 FAR. The nomination proposes to add a third alternative plan option for residential mixed use redevelopment up to an intensity of 2.5 FAR, consisting of a 7-story building with up to 375 multifamily residential units and approximately 10,000 square feet of ground floor non-residential uses and courtyards to improve the pedestrian experience. The nomination includes a new road along the north side of the building, which could potentially facilitate an extension of an east-west street by linking by linking an approved private road on an adjacent residential on an adjacent parcel that's entitled for residential redevelopment on Mary Lee Drive, and that street would also align with Halstead Road to the east. If considered alone, the nomination does not achieve the recommended area of 4 acres for parcel consolidation or propose any coordination with adjoining parcels as recommended for redevelopment of sites less than 4 acres. The nomination proposes a significant increase in development intensity, but it's proposed below the maximum that is achievable, the maximum building heights that are achievable in Merrifield. And this could reduce the potential to create adequate space for usable and publicly accessible on-site parks and recreational amenities. Adjustments to the adopted plan recommendations for open space networks and grid of streets north of Route 29 may be necessary for implementation of residential development options on this site. And therefore, staff analysis finds that the study of a larger area may be warranted to consider planning for a more logical development area, which could potentially be achieved through consolidation or coordination with adjacent nominated sites. So next, I'm going to call on the Lynn Strobel, who is representing the nomination, and she'll provide us with a presentation and from the nominator's point of view.
Thank you very much, Mr. Waller. I appreciate it. Again, my name is Lynn Strobel. I represent the owners who are the nominators for this SSPA that we're discussing this evening. And if you'll go to the next slide, please. As was mentioned, the application property is comprised of 2 parcels located in the Merrifield Suburban Center that are within a half a mile of the Dunloring Metro Station. And if we go to the next slide. As was mentioned, these two parcels are 3.52 acres. And I would note that that's very close to the 4 acres that are recommended for consolidation in order to proceed with redevelopment. These properties are zoned I-5, but what you'll see is that there has been a lot of development in this area. You will see that across Dorr Avenue is a fairly large parcel zoned PRM, which is planned residential mixed use. That is a multi-story residential building. And to the north and the east, you'll see a number of PRM properties that again are developed with multi-story residential buildings. Next slide. So this is the existing conditions. As was mentioned, the property is currently developed with 2 industrial buildings. And while there is industrial next to this property, again, this area has changed a lot over the years. And as I mentioned, there is a lot of residential development, multifamily residential development that has been constructed proximate to the nomination property. Next slide. So the SSPA proposes an option for residential use up to a 2.5 FAR. And that is really important to have that additional FAR because we believe that will encourage redevelopment proximate to the Dunn-Loring Metro Station and create a more effective taper from the core area to the balance of the suburban center. And we believe that it's consistent with Fairfax County policies for additional housing in the county. Our concept plan that would implement the plan language, and this is just a concept, but it shows a 7-story building. It's a single building. It would be multifamily development. It has a structured parking garage that is screened on 3 sides by residential development. The next slide. We've tried to be mindful of staff policies and recommendations. What you see here is the first level floor plan that includes retail development, so a mix of uses on that first floor. In addition, there would be 2 courtyards that could be, transformed into some sort of public open space that could be used by the public as well as the residents. This building shows approximately 375 units in 7 stories. The next slide. So this is our typical floor plan that shows that above the first floor, it would be all residential units. And I failed to mention on the other slide, residential amenities would be incorporated into the building, and we anticipate that they would be on the first floor. The next slide. These are some building sections that would show how the building would be designed. And again, that's showing the parking garage, the courtyards, and the 7 residential floors. And again, we believe it would address the need for housing in Fairfax County. And the next slide. I think this next slide, and I was asked to keep the presentation brief. I've tried to do so, but I really think that this is an important slide because it really helps you understand how this area has developed. If you look at all of the residential buildings that have been constructed proximate to the metro, you see the building that I mentioned that's almost across the street from this proposal. What has been fit onto this site is our concept. It's the massing of the concept. And it really shows, I think, how this area has evolved. And what we're talking about with this SSPA is to allow 2 underutilized industrial properties to be transformed into a residential mixed-use development that's consistent with Fairfax County plan policies. So we think it makes a whole lot of sense to look at this area for some additional development that can actually happen, that makes economic sense. And in order to do that, we're looking at a little bit higher FAR than is currently recommended, but certainly consistent with what's been constructed in this area. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions, and I'll turn it back to staff. And I might add that I have on the phone with us representatives of the owners, as well as Michael Foster, who is our architect. And so if you have any questions for any of us, we'd be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. We have our co-host, I think, checking to see if any hands are raised right now. So if anyone has any questions, please raise your hand, or if you don't want to speak, you don't feel okay. I see a Lindsay. You can unmute.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi. So I'm a current resident in our Mosaic, or I guess our Merrifield area,
Mhm.
and I would like to better understand how this proposed change of real estate and, zoning and all of that will impact our traffic flow, because this is quite a number of residential units that would be put in. So I would like to understand how the infrastructure in our area can support that.
That is a question that has not been that is not we're not able to answer right now. That question would be transportation. An in-depth transportation study would be required if this site does move on for further study. So right now, what we are trying to determine in speaking with you all tonight is whether or not you all feel that there are reasons why further study should be warranted if this site were to move forward, or reasons why it should not move forward for further analysis. And again, part of that further analysis would be an in-depth study of the transportation systems.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Next, we have John Lee.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, I just was wondering if someone knows in this picture here, does someone know the FAR of that L-shaped building to the left of the proposed development?
I don't have, I'm not sure exactly, but I do know it looks like that there's a lot of ground space that's kind of left. And one of the things to note too is that it's at a taller height. I think it's closer in height to the tallest heights that are recommended for Merrifield. But if you want to leave your information in the chat, as a leave your email in a chat, I can definitely get back to answer that question. Or we may even have some of our co-hosts who can do some quick research on that and provide an answer for it.
Yeah, John,
during tonight's meeting.
I wondered
I'll do
if,
what I can to find the answer for you while we're in the meeting, since you asked the question. It's a good question. Yeah.
and I
Okay, so
wanted to
Graham's
suggest
working.
that our architect, Michael Foster, I don't know if he's looked at this building or if he has, if he knows the FAR.
No, I know the height approaches the maximum.
Okay,
Our proposed project is a lower end height, but their lot configuration is different. So I don't know the exact height or exact FAR.
thank you. I just thought I would ask. Thank you.
Next, we have Sonia Brehe.
Sure. Thank you so much. I just wanted to say, I'm glad to see this nomination. I think it's the right place to start building out more of this area in this transit station area. It's close to the metro. It's really going to help enhance the community here overall. And I think you know, it's going to activate this space in a more sort of walkable, pedestrian-friendly, vibrant community that you see closer to the Dunn-Loring Metro. I recognize, you know, and it was noted, the other nominations that are adjacent here. I think it would be good to sort of make sure that they're designed to be connected in a cohesive way, and that it makes sense overall. I also am glad to see that this would be an opportunity to start sort of building out that grid of street there too. And so thinking about how that all lays out will be important, but I just wanted to register my support for this. Thank you.
Thank you.
I noticed that there's a comment in the chat about who would be the owner of this building. Well, the owners today are the owners that submitted the nomination. We don't know what will happen in the future. And there's a question about, would the residential be condominium or apartments? Again, it is so early to try to think about that, and also whether there are any existing business owners who occupy the ground level, because in order to implement this nomination, we would first have to go through a plan amendment, then go through a rezoning. We don't know what the market will be like then, so we really don't know if it would be condominium or apartments. I see that the owner has put in the intent is for rental, and I agree, that's probably what makes sense today. By the time we get to a rezoning approval, we probably would like some flexibility.
Thanks, Lynn.
And
Thanks
John, John's question was about the building that's in that L-shaped area. John, to your question, that's Prosperity Flats. It's about a 1.6 FAR, and that's inclusive of what we call ADUs and WDUs. So if for comparison's sake, it'd be closer probably to about just shy of about a 2.0 FAR if you wanted to compare it to the current proposal, because the 2.5 on this site does not include ADUs and WDUs.
Okay. Thanks, Graham. And thanks, John, for the question. I'm glad we were able to answer it for you right here. I don't see any additional hands raised here. So with that, I think we can move on to the next site. And the next site is nominated as CPN 2025 Roman numeral 1 PR-039, and it consists of two separate sites. These two separate sites contain approximately 5.01 acres. The site is identified by the nominator. The sites are identified by the nominator as blocks 1 and blocks 2, and block 1 is in subunit C3 of the Merrifield Suburban Center, and block 2 is in subunit C4. The existing low-rise buildings on both sites serve various uses that include office uses, institutional uses, industrial flex uses, service, light warehousing, and retail and wholesale uses. At the baseline, the adopted plan recommends for the sites to develop with mixed uses that would include residential, retail, industrial, and warehouse uses at their current intensities. But the plan also provides two redevelopment options for each of the subunits that these sites are in. So block 1 is in subunit C3, and option 1 would allow redevelopment as office uses with supporting retail and service uses up to an intensity of 1.1 FAR. And option 2 allows redevelopment as mixed use and or residential use up to 1.8 FAR. Block 2 is in subunit C4, and it has the first option that allows redevelopment to office use with support retail and service uses up to 0.85 FAR. And option 2 allows redevelopment as mixed use and or residential use up to 1.35 FAR. So the nomination proposes 2 steps that would first amend the land unit map by expanding subunit C1 from the north and into the south to encompass both of the nominated sites and the site that we just reviewed for CPN 2025 Roman numeral 1 PR 030. Next, the nominator proposes a plan option to allow mixed use and or residential redevelopment up to an intensity of 3.2 FAR with a consolidation that would include up to 4.0 or more acres, or up to 3.0 FAR with a consolidation of less than 4.0 acres. And for development potential, the proposal calls for Block 1 to develop with a 7-story building containing up to 450 multifamily residential units, while Block 2 would have a 7-story building with up to 200 multifamily residential units. And each site would also include the activation of ground floor levels and private amenities and or retail uses. And the nominator has also stated that some outdoor space, open space could be set aside for publicly accessible park space and open space. So when considered alone, neither of these 2 nominated sites contains adequate area to achieve the recommended 4 acres for parcel consolidation that's found throughout most sites in Merrifield that are recommended for redevelopment. However, the nomination proposes to include an option that could potentially result in consolidation with adjoining parcels in the expansion of subunit C1. These 2 site-specific proposals are for a significant increase in development intensity while also remaining below the maximum achievable building heights. And that reduces the potential to create adequate space for usable and publicly accessible on-site parks and recreational amenities. The amendment amended the plan for both of these 2 sites would also require us to reevaluate existing recommendations for pedestrian and open space networks and the grid of streets for sites north of Route 29. And however, even though the site proposes some form of expansion that includes adjacent sites, there is no explanation for what the development potential would be if consolidation were possible between these 2 sites and the adjacent site that was nominated by a separate nominator. So next we will move to the nominator's presentation. And with us tonight, we have Kathy Taylor, who is representing the nominations.
Great. Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Waller. My name is Kathy Taylor from the law firm of Walsh Colucci. I also represent the owners of these 5 parcels who are all co-nominators. If we can go to the next slide. So I just wanted to give a little bit of context of where these properties are located. You just heard from Ms. Strobel about the 2 properties. Actually, if you can focus to the portion that's highlighted in yellow. So she had brought up the 2 parcels that are, yep, right there, that are below actually these 2 to the, I guess, southwest of the 2 blocks that Mr. Waller mentioned, Block 1 and Block 2. But I thought it's helpful just to kind of see the context of the Merrifield suburban center. You can see, as you know, Dunloring Metro Station to the north. If some of you are aware or are not aware, there's currently a plan amendment that's being reviewed in conjunction with the rezoning to the west, known as Prosperity Merrifield Business Park, which also looks at integrating townhome and multifamily residential development. And then right to the north, I guess northeast of us, there was a recently approved residential mixed-use development, I believe at a 2.7 or 2.8 FAR that was approved not too long ago. You can see there the rezoning was filed back in 2020. And then to the south, as you know, is the Town Center Mosaic District. So all of these parcels are zoned to the either I-4 and I-5. And actually, if we can go to the next slide. Again, just providing a little bit more context here. You can see the two parcels that are starred, the buildings that are there today. And I'll actually note that one of the parcels is actually vacant land, so there's nothing on there today, but they are both improved, as you heard, with light warehousing buildings, mixed with low-rise office service and other warehouse uses, and they're served by large parking lots. If we go to the next slide, again, just wanted to give you another view. You can see that vacant lot too in the top right picture. You can see that vacant lot. And right above there is the building that will ultimately be redeveloped into another multifamily residential use. And then the two images below are the existing warehouse structures today. So if we go to the next slide, I thought it was helpful to kind of understand in terms of the land use concept map that's currently in the comprehensive plan. If you want to focus on the purple sites, so I have two other nominations tonight, and so I tried to, you'll see some of these slides again, but if you can follow with me. So the purple sites, as you expand, they're all located in land unit C. So as Mr. Waller mentioned, the 5 sites are a mix between subunit C3 and subunit C4. However, if you look, sorry to go back and forth, but if you look back at the land use concept map, these sites are actually located in the core area. So the area that's been designated as closest to the Dunn-Loring Metro Station. As such, we did believe that it would be appropriate to consider the readjustment of those sites to be part of the subunit C1, which does allow for a higher intensity and FAR for those sites as they are closer to the Dunn-Loring, the transit station area. So if we can go to the next slide. I just kind of provided here, one, the concept plan, but also just to kind of recap what the existing subunit is, what we are proposing it to be, and then as Mr. Waller mentioned, what the existing plan language, and then what our proposed plan language is and how that could be realized through our proposed redevelopment. So again, as you saw, there are 2 blocks, Block 1 and Block 2. Block 1 is comprised of 4 parcels. Block 2 is actually 1 parcel currently. And so they would both allow for a parcel consolidation, specifically with Block 1. So the range of FAR in both of these proposals range from a 2.6 to a 3.0 FAR. And while I can appreciate the comment about what is the current FAR of the that 11-story current 11-story residential building that's right to the west of Block 2, one thing that Mr. Waller mentioned when he was showing you graphics of how FAR is calculated, part of the reason we're asking for the higher intensity to a 3.0 FAR is the fact that we are integrating, you can see the green spaces, we would be integrating open spaces, urban parks, which would be publicly accessible. And so when you create those spaces, you do require the higher intensity in order to be able to realize what we're proposing to be a 7-story. So the one that Mr. Lee mentioned was an 11-story residential. In this instance, we would be a 7-story residential. Part of that would have structured parking, open spaces. We would actually integrate with the orange and the blue lines represent the grid of streets that is either existing or planned for the future. So the applicant or the nominators have been mindful of making sure that we are integrating this proposal with the current either existing or planned grid of streets. We would be implementing sidewalks just a streetscape that would be more pedestrian friendly and pedestrian oriented. If we can go to the next slide. So I thought it would be helpful to kind of go through what would be the benefits of moving this towards a more residential development. And as mentioned today, this area maintains low density structures, which are auto oriented with large surface parking lots. And as I've hopefully pointed out, and as Ms. Strobel had mentioned in her presentation, over time, just this area has evolved to be more residential, to create these robust residential communities. And so I think part of what we're looking to do by bringing forth this nomination is to encourage revitalization and redevelopment of these aging industrial office parks to be more pedestrian oriented, transit focused communities that do directly support the county's goal of revitalizing Merrifield and making it more attractive and functionally efficient with these residential mixed-use areas. It would implement a more logical planning to complement what's currently either existing or that's planned. So I mentioned the Prosperity Merrifield Business Park. In this block specifically, it is near, as Ms. Strobel had pointed out, a number of PRM districts that have kind of those higher density residential developments. And so we do think that by integrating and allowing for this this nomination, it would provide better transitions for what is either developed or planned in the surrounding parcels and ensure a pattern of land uses that promotes stability for future development. It also contributes to the county housing supply, would assist to create a diverse housing stock with provision of affordable housing in close proximity to mixed-use centers and in accordance with policy plans. And hopefully it will provide diverse housing options to the metro, closer to the metro area. As mentioned, it would allow for a well-connected grid of streets. I know someone had mentioned sidewalks. I think by integrating these types of uses, it would create multi-use pathways and an enhanced transit access that's envisioned for this larger Merrifield suburban center. And it would create more safe and inviting pedestrian friendly infrastructure in the public realm than what's there existing today. And finally, as mentioned, it would create new green spaces, including publicly accessible urban parks, just gateway parks. This is very much in the visioning phase. So whatever or however we could envision kind of these connected network of green spaces that could logically integrate with what's existing today, but also kind of planned open spaces of the surrounding development. So as one of the community members mentioned, we do think that this creates cohesion for the larger vision of the Merrifield Suburban Center that has evolved in recent years. And I think we're kind of moving towards that trend, and this nomination would follow that. We do look to transform this aging suburban style industrial office park into a more robust residential community with urban parks, improved streetscapes, and really a focus on that pedestrian realm. Again, I appreciate everyone's time and happy to answer any questions this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Looks like we have John Lee again. Mr. Lee, you can unmute yourself.
Got it. Thank you. I guess whenever I'm in the Mosaic District, my only issue with the Mosaic District, I'm like, man, why isn't it bigger? That's my one problem with it. So hearing things about this, it's like got my support. I guess I know you mentioned the urban parks and some green spaces. I guess, do you have any materials or pictures or graphics of what that might look like, or maybe a description?
Sure. Yeah, and at this stage, because it is very conceptual, I think the idea is here's where urban parks could be. If it does get adopted or into the work program, I think that's where you really kind of start putting together the design and looking at what those urban parks, even down to what those actual amenities could be. But at this stage, it's kind of just the idea of, okay, here's where we could integrate certain urban park, or here's how it could be envisioned for this parcel. So that's sort of what we've represented. I know it's a little bit like blocks and things like that, but that's what we've presented tonight.
And The Fairfax County Park Authority and their staff, they would be, if this were to move along for further study, more in-depth study, the Park Authority staff would be fully engaged in the review process for this, and they have a set of standards that can be found on their website that lays out what the expectations are for urban parks, and there are also certain guidelines and ideas that are set forth for the urban park framework within Merrifield that we would be looking for any of these nominations to conform with. So,
Got it. Thank you.
you're welcome. We have Dario Davies, Mr. Davies.
Yes, how are you doing? Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, one of my concerns is given today's environment, and especially in terms of the cost increases of construction based on the tariffs that look like going to be applied to certain construction materials across the board, FAR becomes very, very, very important. So does the county recognize that? Sorry, does the county recognize that and will appropriate the right FAR going forward on these developments?
The county respects those factors, and I think we also recognize that, as you'll see tonight, there's a trend I think in the construction industry when you're looking at this type of construction, without even the new idea of the impact of new tariffs. I think there's an understanding that most people are now looking to build this type of construction, at least within Merrifield, at a certain height. That's one of the things you'll notice is the trend for tonight is 7 stories. So there's a certain level of respect for that, but we also have to have respect for the idea that the more people that will move into this area, there's still going to also be a need for more open space and parks and things for those people to use. So from our standpoint, there's a certain amount of balancing that needs to be considered, and that's why another thing that you'll kind of see us taking on is this idea that a lot of these sites, looking at a lot of these sites as site specifically and on their own, may not be good enough to meet the needs that the construction industry have and the developers have, while also meeting the needs of the future residents, if that makes sense.
No, I understand that. That makes a lot of sense. It needs to be how would I put it? A
Balanced approach.
Yeah, a balanced approach, consolidation of everybody so that what we want to achieve will be achieved. But, economics is very, very important. You can't.
Yes, sir.
We need to understand what happens to build a 7-story building. Sorry, I have an architectural background, so I do that a lot. So that was my question. Hope that's clear. Thank you.
We definitely listen to all points for each of these cases. So
thank you. Okay.
You're welcome.
And Steve, if I may, real quick, Dario asked a similar question to a question that we had in the chat, which was about the FAR of some of the existing mixed-use buildings that have been developed in this section of Merrifield, and they range. Some of them are at about a 2.0 FAR. One of them, the Prosperity Flats, is 1.6, for example, but they go up almost to 3.0 FAR. And so there, like Steve was saying, we're recognizing that with modern construction types, there is just a need for greater densities to be able to implement and really get the kind of mixed use environment that we're after in Merrifield. I think it's really mostly just a balancing act with, the provision of the kinds of things that make this area a truly residential place. So open space parks being the number one thing. The other thing I would mention is we do have, I think as Steve was describing, just to the west of these sites off of Dorr Avenue, a large plan amendments going forward too that, is presenting a number of opportunities to look a little bit more holistically at this section of Merrifield in terms of open space and potential revisions to the grid of streets and the open space systems diagrams that we have in the Merrifield plan. So we think there's a lot of opportunity with the nominations that we're talking about tonight to look at some of the things that with that plan amendment, the other one that I was describing, that are a little bit further along, to reflect and take into account if we are going to do these next. So it all needs to come together at the end of the day, but I think that density in this location makes a lot of sense because we have a metro station here and we want to be able to capitalize on that.
Yep.
Yeah, and I agree to that. That's exactly what I was trying to infer. Thank you.
Thank you. Not seeing any more raised hands for this one. So we can move on to the next one. And for these final two, Kathy Taylor, she'll be representing the nomination. So we'll try to flow through these. The nominated site for CPN 2025 Roman numeral 1 PR 035 contains approximately 1.99 acres in subunit C4. The existing low-rise building here serves industrial and a variety of industrial, flex, and service types of uses. At the baseline, the adopted plan recommends for mixed uses that include can include residential use, retail, industrial, and warehouse uses at the current intensities. And we have two options because the site is in subunit C4 for redevelopment to office with support retail and service uses up to 0.85 FAR, and for mixed uses and or residential use up to 1.335 FAR.
Yeah.
The nomination proposes a new plan option for mixed use and or residential redevelopment up to an intensity of 3.0 FAR. And the development proposal is for the conceptual development proposal is for a 7-story building with up to 200 multifamily residential units, activation of ground floor space with private amenities and or retail uses, and the integration of publicly accessible open space and urban park space to encourage pedestrian activity and improve placemaking. So again, considered alone, this site lacks adequate area to conform with the adopted plan recommendations for a parcel consolidation of a minimum of 4 acres. And it's also just short of the recommendations for coordinated development with of up to 2 acres. And it also does not provide any options. It does not currently provide any options for coordinated development or consolidated development with any of the adjoining parcels.
Yeah.
The site is in the adjacent to core area, and it proposes a significant increase in intensity and density above the adopted plan for core area sites that are near to the metro station. And it also proposes building heights that are below the maximum achievable heights in Merrifield for redevelopment in Merrifield in subunit C4, which could potentially reduce the opportunities for creating adequately sized, usable, and publicly accessible open space, parks, and recreational amenities. When looking at this site and the size of the site, there is also the potential need for adjustments to the adopted plan recommendations for pedestrian and open space network and the grid of streets for sites that are north of Route 29 and specifically within Land Unit C. And for all these reasons, the staff's analysis finds that the study of a larger area of development may be warranted. So next again, we'll go to Kathy Taylor with the nominator's presentation.
Hello, good evening again. Kathy Taylor from the law firm of Walsh Clucci. So the nominator in this instance is also the property owner of these 2 parcels. If we can go to the next slide. So a lot of the presentation you'll see tonight is very similar to what you just saw. However, there are a few idiosyncrasies about this site, which that's what I'll focus on. So I'm not necessarily repeating all of the same information I've already given to you. As you can see, this is this block or these properties are highlighted again in the yellow, just so you can kind of focus on where it's located. Unlike the others, this is direct adjacent to that Prosperity Merrifield Business Park that Mr. Owen even alluded to in his comments. That's going through a larger plan amendment, integrating an open space and grid of streets, et cetera. So this is currently zoned to the I-5, as Mr. Waller mentioned. It's approximately 2 acres at the southwest corner of the intersection of Dorr Avenue and Merrifield Avenue. It is within a half-mile walking distance from the Dunn-Loring Metro Station, and it's proximate that 11-story multifamily to the north. And as I mentioned directly, you can see directly to the west is that ongoing Prosperity Business Park plan amendment that's underway. The housing prototype that would be directly adjacent should that development proceed and ultimately get approved would be you can kind of see there, it would be townhomes or townhouses is what would be right next to this. So if we go to the next slide, again, I like pictures because I think it helps to give context. So the next is just the image of what this area looks like. You can see its proximity to that more urban core area to the north. Right now to the west, it is kind of existing 1-story industrial office uses, but ultimately that will be the hope is that it will redevelop into a much more vibrant and mixed use residential development that does include townhomes and multifamily. So the next slide again just shows what that building looks like today, which is currently leased to an auto repair shop, home maintenance services, and other industrial flex uses. So this is an image. The next slide is what you saw before. However, now I'm going to focus you to the blue rectangle. You can see where the site is today. As Mr. Waller mentioned, it's in subunit C4, and it is identified in the areas adjacent to the core areas, kind of that beige color. Just the comprehensive plan specifically calls these adjacent areas to be more pedestrian. The vision is that they will be more pedestrian oriented than today and characterized with high quality site and building design, open space amenities, and creating a sense of place in a more suburban setting, which is, I believe, what the nomination that we're proposing tonight does, in fact, would hopefully accomplish. So moving to the next slide, again, similar to what I provided before, just giving you what the existing subunit, it's C4, that wouldn't change. There's existing plan language. We are looking at proposed plan language, again, residential up to 3.0 FAR. That takes into account the urban space, just kind of the different residential amenities that would be on the site. So this proposal that you see, while we say up to a 3.0 FAR, this is up to a 7-story building, and actually what would be achieved if you were to do a 220 unit residential community with the ground floor non-residential uses, as well as the streetscape, et cetera, it would ultimately result in a 2.6 FAR. This would, because it's 2 parcels, there would be a parcel consolidation similar to the previous nomination. It would have an integration of that grid of streets that I had mentioned before that we're showing with the orange, an active streetscape, as well as open space and urban parks. So the one thing if we go to the next slide, it's the same bullet points that I provided previously. I'll particularly note the bullet point about implementing logical planning to complement surrounding intensities and land uses. As I mentioned, because there's a current ongoing application being considered in terms of that larger Prosperity Merrifield Business Park, as you know, with townhomes right next door, it seems logical as this site is closer to the Dunn-Loring Metro Station, that this would allowing for multifamily residential here, it would allow for a better transition as it would step up, right, as you move closer from the townhomes to a multifamily development in order to get, as you get closer to that metro station and the more urban areas of the Merrifield suburban center. So I think that, you know, in doing so, it makes sense and would be reasonable to think that it might need to be replanned to kind of look at that larger vision of the Merrifield Merrifield Suburban Center. So I won't go through all of this again, but I do think that this also contributes to that, creating more of a cohesion with that larger Merrifield Suburban Center. Again, transforming this kind of aging industrial park into a more robust residential community. So happy to answer any questions. Just a few differences with this one, but relatively the same idea of why we believe it makes sense to move this towards residential mixed use.
Thanks again, Kathy. So now we will see if there are any questions from the community. And while we're waiting for hands to be raised, I was asked to acknowledge a question about the potential timing of these redevelopment projects. And because this is the very beginning of what would likely be a pretty extended land use exercise for each of these sites, the timeframes for development have not been set. And it's my understanding that each of the nominations are really just the nominators and the property owners and I guess their identification that in some ways, kind of going back to Dario's question, that a lot of the things that are currently in the comprehensive plan may not be possible under more modern development conditions and market conditions and economic conditions in some ways, because a lot of what the current plan calls for is lower intensity development that would be spread out over a larger area. And much of the larger consolidations, aside from the site that Kathy's been talking about at Prosperity Business Park, that has about 40 acres. Many of the opportunities for those larger scale redevelopment types of projects and consolidations have already taken place to kind of get us to where we are in Merrifield now. So at this point, none of the everything that we're seeing tonight is pretty conceptual. But if it goes on to the plan amendment work, to the plan amendment work program, then it allows the developers and also county staff to kind of look deeper into what happens if these changes are being made, if that makes sense. So right now, everything, there's no plan for like if this became a comprehensive plan amendment, right now there's no plan to move them forward into zoning, which would be the next step. And then after zoning, it would go into site planning, and then it would go into permitting, and then would be allowed to go into construction. But right now, we're kind of at the exploratory phase of first determining if any of these sites merit deeper analysis. And then with that deeper analysis, it would still have to be decided if the Board of Supervisors would adopt these changes. We have a question from Anna. You can unmute.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay, thanks. This has really been very interesting. So like I've been in the chat and I think a lot of people are saying like, when is this going to happen? And is this because the way that the discussions have been presented, it seems like, oh, wow, we're going to see big buildings. But what I just understood from you is that you're saying this is kind of just like literally block one. Like we're just talking about language or something.
Right now we're talking about whether or not these should go any further into what would then be an amendment of the comprehensive plan. If there are reasons why they should not advance into a spot where we would consider changing the comprehensive plan to allow higher intensity development on these sites. We want to hear from you. If there are reasons why these sites should move further and be considered as comprehensive plans, we also want to hear from you. But right now, these are not actual. I saw another question about why there aren't renderings or or something of that nature for all of these sites. Nothing has really been rendered because the county hasn't decided if we're even gonna. The board of supervisors hasn't even decided if the county should even consider these as actual development proposals yet. So
What is I don't think everybody understands what the Board of Supervisors is. I think a lot of people just are looking, they lease here or they want to buy here or, I mean, like, I don't think everybody understands what the process and the Board of Supervisors is. I think it was on one of your slides, but
the board of
to
supervisors,
the rest of us, it sounds sort of like this is going to happen tomorrow.
The board of supervisors is is a panel of elected officials. They are elected by you as community members for each of the county's supervisors districts, and they are in the case of plan amendments, they are the final deciding panel who would vote whether or not to move these into a position where they would be considered as plan amendments that would then require more detailed information to be submitted from each of the nominators and anyone who's partnering with them for development. Right now, that decision has not been made. So in late May or early June is when we will have the Board of Supervisors will have a public hearing where everyone can come out and continue to voice their opinions on whether or not these sites merit further exploration and further analysis.
Yes, I agree. So can you hear me? This is Dario.
Yes.
Okay. So I think what's happening here is in this whole area between Mosaic and Dunloring Metro, we all realize that that area should be redeveloped to something that would be more supportive of those two locations. I mean, Mosaic, I love Mosaic. It's a great place to go. It's a community center, which is wonderful. And then we have the Metro, which is north of us, and we should support that also. So the better support is not light industrial warehouses, which is there now, but something that would be a more mixed-use development that would support those two locations. And that's what I notice as an architect, and I want to support. So that's my position. Thank you.
And thank you, Mr. Davies. And Kathy, do you have any? I spoke a lot about where we are in the process, but do you have any idea if your clients have a time frame for when they would be planning to develop? If we went through, if any of these were authorized, and then we went through a comprehensive plan amendment?
Sure. I mean, I think with, obviously I have the 3 nominations that are being presented. And I think, one of the questions that one of the community members brought up, or at least one of the comments is, why not bigger? And I think part of our desire, I'll kind of get into your question in a minute, but something that I heard also, like one part of bringing these nominations forward, I think for some of these property owners that do own in this area, by having the higher FAR, I think, and especially higher FAR if you consider consolidation. So if you're able to consolidate some of these parcels and create a larger land area and having that higher FAR, I think really kind of incentivizes these property owners to maybe seek development that would be more in keeping with the plan language. And so I think that's part of it. And I do have the property owner of one of the parcel or several of the parcels in my earlier nomination, the subunit C1. I know that property that she is looking to redevelop sooner. So if there was opportunity and if the plan language was consistent with how she could redevelop this site successfully, I think that also kind of assists in the process and kind of the decision, the business decisions of moving it forward. So I can't say specifically that we have any specific timelines in mind, but I do think that it could happen if the FAR is there to be able to achieve these higher densities. That's in keeping with current and planned development. I do think it could move more quickly. I know the property owner is here if she wanted to provide any additional comment to that, but that's my sense.
Okay.
Good.
And
So-
I'm sorry.
No, I appreciate the comment.
Thank you. It looks like Anna still has her hand raised, and I think there was someone else who asked if they could be unmuted. And
I don't have any further questions. if my
okay,
hand is Still raised.
okay, thank you.
And I think it was Robbie Jindal. Robbie, feel free to you can unmute yourself if you'd like. Go ahead.
Awesome, thank you. And I just want to thank the county for put this on for the residents. I think it's really helpful, and I appreciate the engagement. And I'll kind of preface my comments here with I'm an owner in Halstead too, so live right in the area. And I think some of these proposals were saying, hey, option one is an office. Doesn't make a lot of sense to me just personally, given that they're tearing down the office building next to us, and there's a vacant one about a block from us as well. And, I think the other thing is like a lot of these proposals are for condos. I don't really feel like that's lacking in our area. I mean, we have 3 or 4 apartment, companies that have dozens of listings and vacancies at any given point. And, it's really, if you look at the condos that are for sale, there's really not that many relative to the people. And, I think it really just provide this pathway for people to start building that wealth and equity in the neighborhood and be more invested. So, as, these get further along, I think, that's just something for them to consider. And, a lot of these are also requesting, retail space. And, there's just so much vacancy here too on, by the Metro, by Lost Dog, in Mosaic as well. So don't know if we need more vacant retail where that could be additional housing, that could help, because we need the housing in the county. And, it's really great to hear that some of these proposals have put forth that, hey, they're going to comply with, the low income housing and all of that. So that's going to help a lot of people as well. But,
Yes, sir.
just wanted to mention that, like, I really feel like we have an opportunity here. And I do feel like, hey, and having more people here will allow these businesses to stay. That's one of the main reasons why I moved. I'm Vienna born and raised, but I moved 3 miles to Dunloring because I can walk to restaurants. I can walk to the grocery store, the dry cleaners, the auto shop. So I think it would be a real boon to these businesses to have people that are more invested in the community. But just want to thank everyone.
All right, thanks a lot. Next, I think we have Maria Coakley and Lindsay. So
Okay, can I unmute? Is that all right?
yes.
Perfect. Well, I've heard a lot of positive support for apartments, condos, more green space, more continuity. I just wanted to say that we have a lot of legacy businesses in Merrifield, like the Marble Systems and kitchen companies that want to, that would probably take some of this retail space that some of these properties are proposing and allow them to stay in their locations. There's an art and frame store. There is a Western store. There's a number of stores in these older buildings that are not very appealing right now because they're in these older buildings. But imagine if they were in the lower levels of these beautiful, condos or apartments. And we would work very hard to work with those legacy businesses so that they could stay in the area. And I just think I wanted to mention that and respond to, yes, there are some vacancies, but there are also some very long-term businesses that have supported Merrifield, and that's been their home for decades and decades. And we'd like to see some of those have the opportunity, to be part of this transformation and be part of, a new space that they could continue to run their business that they have put so much time, energy, and love into. So that's my comment.
That's great to hear. So,
Thank you.
thank you. Next we have Lindsay.
Hi, I had a follow-up question. Sorry, I'm walking on the street right now. If you hear the background noise. So when we say low-income housing, can we have a definition of what that is? I just want to make sure that everybody here is clear about how that's being defined within the construct of these proposed residential areas.
The county does not have a definition for low income housing. We use terms such as affordable housing and workforce housing, and a lot of it is just I guess the actual definition for affordable housing, when you're talking about market rate affordable housing, is a household that is that has a yearly earning that is 60% of the average median income for the count for the area that they're in, not really the entire county. So it's 60% AMI qualifies for affordable market rate housing.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. I see Ms. Coakley's hand still up. I don't know if you have any additional comments, you can unmute yourself. If not, I see you've lowered your hand. So if there are no additional questions for the previous nomination, we can move to our last nomination for the night, and that is CPN 2025 Roman numeral 1 PR 036. And this is a nomination that contains two separate sites with approximately 5.57 acres combined. And the nominator has identified the first site as property 1, which contains 3.55 acres, and property 2, which has 2.02 acres. Both of these sites are in subunit C7, and they are developed with low-rise industrial flex, service, light warehousing, and wholesale uses. The adopted plan recommends for subunit C7 to remain as currently planned and developed, primarily with warehouse and industrial uses, and at the currently developed intensities. And the maximum height that is recommended for subunit C section and subunit C section is 50 feet. So the nominator is proposing an option for mixed use and or residential redevelopment up to an intensity of 3.0 FAR here, similar to the previous two nominations. And on property Roman numeral 1, we would have we have a concept for a 7-story building with up to 420 multifamily residential units. And on property Roman numeral 2 is a 7-story building with up to 220 multifamily residential units. And they are also proposing activation of ground floor levels with private amenities and or retail uses. And there is also language in the nomination that says that they would also provide publicly accessible open space and park space for recreational amenities. So the planning considerations for this nomination, staff is finding that property 1 is split between the adjacent to core area and a non-core area, which is non-core areas in Merrifield are recommended to mostly remain as they are and currently developed and recommended by the adopted plan. And property 2 is in the adjacent to core area, but more than 1/2 mile distance from the metro station. And it is also for adjacent to core area, that again is the area that is recommended to step down in density and intensity and height from what is recommended for the core area. So when considered alone, each of these 2 sites are not able to conform with the 4-acre recommendation for consolidated redevelopment in Merrifield. And both of them propose a significant increase in development intensity and density above what is currently recommended by the adopted plan for both the nominated sites and also in the core area. The location of property 1 in proximity to Route 29 could potentially be impacted by high levels of transportation generated noise and adjustments to the adopted plan recommendations for pedestrian and open space networks, and the grid of streets would likely be needed to accommodate these nominations as proposed. And for all these reasons, once again, staff is finding that the study of a larger area for development may be warranted to identify a more suitable plan of development and intensity that could allow consolidation or coordination among more sites that would get them closer to that 4 acres or above. So with that, I will pass the mic again to Kathy, and she can provide information from the nominator's perspective.
Great, thanks, Mr. Waller. And I really appreciate everybody's comments tonight. And I also, to echo Ms. Coakley, I appreciate everyone's kind of positive support of these nominations, and Mr. Davies as well. You know, kind of the vision, what we all see could be this vibrant mixed-use residential in between the Dunn-Loring Metro Station and the very active Mosaic District to the south. So if we go to the first slide here, again, context. I love to present that for those looking here. You can focus on the yellow. One thing to note about this, although it's in Land Unit C, it is, I like to believe, you know, very close to both the core, the 2, as Mr. Waller mentioned, there's the southern core, which is the Mosaic District, and then there's the northern core, which is the Dunn-Loring Metro Station. So I think that this location specifically is ripe for residential, you know, mixed-use residential because of its proximity to both of those core areas. If we go to the next slide, and actually, from the previous slide, you saw that this is also right next to that adjacent Merrifield Prosperity Business Park development, which also plays into why we believe it's appropriate to see this existing kind of 1-story industrial area redevelop into something that's more in keeping with what is ultimately planned and visioned for the larger Merrifield area. So you can just see the 2 stars. That's where this is looking north towards the Dunn-Loring Metro Station. So you can see all of that mixed use residential closer to the urban core towards your north, but you can see kind of its proximity where these 2 existing buildings are. The next slide actually shows the view if you're looking south towards the Mosaic. So you can also see that this is also sort of a prime spot if you were to have some sort of mixed use residential here within walking distance of both that Dunn-Loring Metro Station, you know, less than a mile to the north, and then less than a mile to the south, you have the Mosaic district area as well. So I thought that that's a sort of an idiosyncrasy of this site of why we believe that this would be appropriate to see mixed use residential development. So the next slide, again, just provides that larger land use context map. Oh, sorry, existing conditions, here's the buildings, the 1 story, yep. And then what's there today, the existing industrial and office retail, especially retail uses. So if we go to the next slide, that's the larger, or the land use concept map, again, focusing on the green parcels. You can see those are both located in subunit C7. And as mentioned, this is a better graphic. You can see its proximity both to the southern core area, the Mosaic District, as well as the northern core area, which is the Dunloring Metro Station. So if we go to the next slide. The one thing that I'll note here, you know, we are asking right now, if you look at the existing plan language, the one thing I'll highlight is there's a base plan for this site, which is keeping the warehouse and industrial uses at current intensities. As I think I've heard from a lot of the community members this evening, it would seem that some sort of residential development would be appropriate here. However, unlike the other subunits, there is actually no redevelopment option on the site. So under current plan language, you wouldn't be able to redevelop this to residential because there's just no plan language for that. And then the building height here is maxed at 50 feet. So our nomination asks that we consider a redevelopment option up to a 3.0 FAR, and we actually to look at increasing the maximum building height to something taller. And I'll also note, if you look at on the concept, if you kind of look at the larger.
Oh, guess who's home? Oh,
If
I'm
you look
sorry.
at if you look at, that's okay. If you look at the larger map, we are right next to that Prosperity business park, which would be townhomes right adjacent. So again, similar to the nomination that you just heard, thank you. Similar to the nomination that you just heard, it would provide for more of a step up, so to speak, a step up transition from the townhomes to your west as you move closer to both the Mosaic Core District as well as the Dunloring Metro Station Core District. So again, we believe that this nomination is ripe for reconsideration of planning, creating kind of the larger, vibrant residential mixed-use development that ultimately could become the Merrifield Suburban Center. And so happy to answer questions about this nomination specifically. And I really appreciate everyone's time and comments. I think all of this feedback was very helpful. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kathy. Now we'll go back to some questions and feedback, and it looks like Ms. Coakley David has has her hand up again for another question or some comments.
Yeah, I guess I'm just trying to understand if you can consolidate 2 parcels that are in no way connected.
No,
So-
and
Sorry, go ahead.
That's one of the things that staff's analysis was identifying, that these two sites are separated, and so there's no opportunity for the 2 sites to be consolidated. But I think the recommendation would be, if possible, if there was some opportunity to work with some neighboring property owners, maybe that could make a more logical planning area for the study with either of those sites on the same sides of the street that they would be on, of course. So
Okay, because we do have a property across the street from the site that we have our nomination. So if that's something that makes sense, I just want to make sure we understand that, so that, because we would be able to get over the 4 acres. So I just found that to be a bit surprising, and I didn't know if that was really a thing or not. So
and for sites that are smaller than 4 acres, if you can't achieve consolidation, there is also a recommendation to try for coordination. So coordination would kind of be like if you were across the street from one site and you want to redevelop, and both sites on opposite sides of the street want to redevelop, then if there's a plan for an adjacent road, I mean, for a road that would be adjacent to your parcels to come through both sites, you would try to align your part of your of maybe your access with what's happening across the street. So if someone were passing through your site and then going to the opposite side of the street, so they could have a straight shot across the street instead of having to make a left or right and then turning to go to continue on the street. So there's allowances for coordination in that way. That's a simple way of putting it, but there could also be an opportunity for your site to provide additional open space and parks for, to get your additional to allow additional in a way that would allow additional development on a parcel that may not be joined to yours. So there are different ways to coordinate, but it's really not up for staff to determine what level of coordination you do. It really takes some kind of proactivity between you and your neighbors to say, hey, you're having this issue. I think I can help you out with it. If it'll make both of our sites a lot better and align more appropriately with the vision for Merrifield.
So
Without
what I'm hearing is that they can coordinate, but they can't be consolidated to achieve this.
They may be able to coordinate, but because they're on opposite sides of the street, consolidation of all the sites that are nominated that are part of this last nomination we look to, it is not possible. But again, that also doesn't preclude them from consolidating or coordinating with some of the adjacent properties if anyone else that adjoins them is interested in redevelopment as well.
Okay, thank you for that.
We have Anna.
Yes, thank you. Could we see the context map for a second? Because I mean, I grew up around here, and so I was like, yes, thank you. So that pink part, that's not something we're talking about today, right? That's something we talked about a couple years back.
At the very bottom, or you mean
Prosperity Merrifield Business Park.
Kathy's provided that for context, because that one is still undergoing a review of a plan amendment. It was authorized to go on the plan amendment work program, and it is still being studied, going through this
Okay, so
more
that's like
in-depth
step
study.
2. That's like step 2, right? The plan amendment work program.
Mm-hmm.
I remember listening to that one a couple years back. Like I said, I grew up around here. I do have property in this area. I know Maria. I know a lot of people that are in this discussion, but I mean, if I just remember hearing that was going to provide like biking trails. And so a lot of warehouses are going to be changed to be more residential to allow for more people to be able to commute to Dunmore.
Correct.
And so when we're talking about the fact that the two pieces that are in the yellow square are not connected, I mean, it's like we're doing Legos, because it seems like so many of these pieces are just moving towards the same thing.
And that would be the ultimate plan. The problem that arises when you think about the way that the comprehensive plan looks at having a minimum size recommendation for redevelopment is that as things if things continue to happen on a site by site basis, especially on some of these smaller sites, we end up missing out on having some of the other things that Merrifield calls for, like open space and publicly accessible parks that are large enough to meet the urban parks framework that the Fairfax County Park Authority has certain specifications for the minimum sizes for urban parks, and so
I think we should just do a mile high. I think we should just connect it all over the roads and have something super cool that that becomes a really big drawing point to this area. I mean, it sounds crazy, but I think we.
No, it's not really crazy though, because the framework for parks in Merrifield kind of calls for that. There should be a connected network of parks that help support this whole idea that this area should be more pedestrian friendly and less, and people who live here and work here and come here to shop and eat and things like that should rely less on the vehicle. Basically, you should be able to park your car in one place if you're coming to visit, or hop off the metro if you're coming to visit, and walk everywhere. And the walk should be pleasant, and you should have places to rest and enjoy yourself in between shopping and visiting your friends and things like that. So everything that you said is really what we're looking for to happen in Merrifield in the future.
Cool. Thanks, Stephen.
You're welcome.
Okay.
A nice overview of what needs to happen to the area.
Thank you. So I'm looking, and I'm not sure if there are I don't see any more hands, and I don't know if I see some comments that we will take note of, but I don't see any. I'm not sure if I see any additional questions. So that's a perfect segue to our final slide here. What happens next? So here on the right, you can see the dates for Planning Commission workshops, where the Planning Commission will come together and they will consider all the information that's been gathered tonight from you as community members, and they'll also take a look at the nominations and the cases that have been made by the nominators, and as well as staff's analysis, our initial analysis. And from there, they will make at these workshops, they will make recommendations on which nominations out of all of the 43 that are being reviewed should be placed on the plan amendment work program. And going into those meetings, between now and those meetings, what staff is going to be doing is summarizing all the feedback that we received tonight, and as follow-up to tonight's meeting. And again, the public is invited to take part in those workshops, but any information that you provide to us ahead of time, even if you don't show up to the workshop, is going to be provided for consideration by the plan amendment. And at the top of the slide, you see some links for some of the ways that you can provide your public input. There is an Engage Fairfax. There's an Engage Fairfax website that you could click on, and you can read the initial reports that staff has provided and published for each of these sites. And then there are also some questions that you can answer, and some written feedback that you can provide that'll be collected from our public public input application. And you can also mail DDPD SSPA at fairfaxcounty.gov, and we will compile any questions. We'll try to answer any questions you have, but also compile any comments you have for the Planning Commission and Board of Supervisors consideration. And below that is a link to the SSPA website, where you can go again and look at find more information about what the SSPA process is, what will take place from here on out. And there are calendars where these dates that are currently tentative will be updated once they are final and official. And on the far right, in the kind of in the upper right hand corner, is a QR code that if you have your phone handy, you can scan that code now, and that'll take you to that SSPA website. So on behalf of my colleagues here in the Department of Planning and Development, and also on behalf of the Providence Supervisor District Office, Supervisor Dahlia Palchik's office, I want to thank everyone for attending and providing us with your feedback. And we look forward to going into those Planning Commission workshops, being more informed to have these conversations with the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors now because of your participation tonight. And we thank you. And that concludes our meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You-